Đó đó ski ấy ông thì có ý.
Called the Knaist.
Wow.
Again, Knaist, we got Shiladan Elahi. We got Shiladan Elahi. The root word of this, for I'm going to call you, is Ashiladan. And those two yelled?
Ashilda, it's a string or wire that has been connected from one object to the other. Ashilda, that could be a string or a wire. Ashilda, did the lashka know with the no haiti, Zuyana, the shildana, with the galoshka, with telephones, the first telephones, the sound went through the wires that were connected from one point to another.
Mm-hmm. And that makes a lot of sense whenever we talk about we got shildan Elohim. Because whenever you conjugate it from me to you, it has to have ga on the prefix for it. So with ga being the prefix, it'll automatically tell you, well, it's from me to you. So we drop the ah in the root word, or I believe it's called the free base morpheme here, and it turns into ga, which is replaced right here. And we can look at the end suffix to know when it's going to be he, or the e here. And this is the progressive future tense. Now, some progressive future tenses have st at the end of them, but they still end with e. This one, though, is just ending with he. And we can come back to the prefix here, even though we're working around. We being a indication of distance. So, like, we ashi, if I was telling you, we ashi, hand it to her or him over there, something solid. And you say,
Or we did she.
Mm-hmm. Or we na ashi, or we na hashi if it was a liquid, or we kashi if it was alive. But all those words have something similar. We, because of the fact that that person, whoever it is further away, maybe on the other side of the room, but they're not right here. Because if they were, it would be he.
It would be he, hum, she.
Mm-hmm. As the prefix. He, hum, she. All right, and then we'll come down here to diski shildan elahi for call me. The D prefix being do it again, or it can also mean more than one thing, but in this case it is more than one thing if you think about it, because not only is the person going to be telling you more than one thing, or in that sense, I guess, wiring you more than one thing.
Or diski shildan elahi, back to me.
Mm-hmm. And the ski indicating that I'm commanding you to, do something for me, or like ski no hishi, tell me, ski no hishi. You may know the song "Guide Me, Jehovah." Squati ni shesti Yehovah. That song and that word squati ni shesti, it's guide me. So you're telling somebody, the person you're talking to, squati ni shesti, and the prefix for that is still going to be sg. But it does follow different rules depending on what the root word is. But in this case, we're talking about ashildana or ashiladan. So it's going to follow the ski pattern. And of course, you keep the A chalked off, and then you add neilahi. And the E being your indication still a future, because you just drop it right down. So for the most part, it's almost all the same, except for the D which remember is going to be your repetitive pronoun prefix, and the ski being your imperative tense. All right.
She.
And why? I'm going, or are you going to call me? Daski skildane leidzu. Daski skildane leidzu.
Daski skildane leidzu.
Hawa. Now, this pronoun prefix here, da, that's going to indicate future tense. Da. And I'll use the example, Dagahno Hishele, for I'm going to tell you. Dagahno Hishele. You notice now that that word also follows this one, for I'm going to call you. It still has the gun in it, but it follows the da. So we'll go on to the next prefix here, ski, same story with call me. You're telling somebody that that you're going to do something to me. So in a sense, it's part imperative tense and progressive future tense, because you have li at the end of it, and the e is going to signify the future. And of course, that lines up with what we've been doing with these other words. So shigo skino hishi.
Daski skildane leidzu. Daski skildane leidzu.
She.
Are you going to call me?
Okay, you may have noticed that whenever Granny said this word, she didn't pronounce the ah on this law, and that's just part of fluency. Could you say that though?
Daski skildane leidzu. But then if I'm talking to you, daski skildane leidzu. So you wouldn't hear it.
And in this instance, if we didn't have the a, again.
Yeah, again.
All right. So looking back at these words, I noticed you didn't pronounce the on there on this word here. So why is that?
Because it's in conversation. Daski skildane leidzu.
And having it written like this is important still, though, even though you don't pronounce the ah, because you can make the connection between this word and the word for wire or string, ashilada. So if you didn't have the ah there, and we'll say that you knew the word for stringing it up, zaka, stringing it up. You might not be able to make that connection, because I didn't know the root word for this.
It means it's put a string or a wire is connected. I mean, it's up and connected from one post or tree to the other.
So it's still part of the root of the word, or the free base morpheme. Not morphine like you use in a drip, morpheme.
I was getting excited.
No, honey.
And the same story with this one. Would you tell me this in the conversational sense?
Wika skildane leidzu.
No.
Diski skildane leidzu. Daski skildane leidzu.
Hawa osta ski. Now, one last thing I wanted to add on to this word, or to explain, whenever you ask a question, like, are you going to call me? Or, are you hungry? Are you going? How are you? All those words have zu at the end of them. Or hask in this sense, we're using zu. So if you're hungry, zayoshi hask. How are you, oshigwazu? Are you going, zena stishk? So I guess that was a bad example. But those questions follow either a zu pattern or a shk pattern.
And oftentimes a word, if the inflection isn't correct, if you're asking a question, it could become a command rather than a question.
Mm-hmm. And so we'll move down to the next word here. Did you call him or her? Would you like to say that for me, Granny?
We should have done that later.
All right. And
But you could also say, we should have done that later.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
See, there's the other form or other pattern with the sk at the end of it. All right, so did you call him or her? And if you notice, the we is on this one because we're still talking about distance. Distance as in, you know, if you were talking about, are you gonna wire it, or did you wire it to him or her? So they're not here, they're somewhere else. So we're gonna talk about we as a pronoun prefix. And, all right, so on to our next couple words here. First one, again, who called you?
Cog. The dog should have done that later. Because you could say cog. Cog. The dog should have done that later.
All right, so we have who, or cog used.
Mm-hmm.
Cog used.
Cog used to.
Being the full word. Ditza. D being the plural of somebody that just did. So if we look back at dishkil shitanela.
Dishki should have done that.
We have the D on the front of that word as well, to emphasize of course they said more than one thing to you if they called you, more than likely. So that's going to emphasize the plural, what does it say? The plural pronoun or plural prefix for the pronoun, and za being you. So if y'all are familiar with agi, za, and u, the basic conjugation for set be that comes before a consonant. That comes before a consonant. So if we have agi for me, za for you, and u for he or she. And since we're talking to you, it's going to be za. And then of course, same thing that we've been doing. We cut off the ah on this ashilada. And then we have just shilada as the root. And then the ne being an action suffix. We won't go too far into that, but we'll just touch on the last one here. The last suffix, lay. Lay, whenever you have a on the end of a word, it can mean a question, and also it can mean past tense. So whenever you say like, "Doishtadanele," what did you do? So that follows almost exactly the same pattern. Dozadanele, ditokshildanele. All right. And my friend called me Oganali. Well, excuse me.
Dirk should have done that. The ah being silent. Oganali. Dirk should have done that.
And a lot of people ask what exactly Oganali is. Within our conjugation here, I'm just going to use this as a reference. The way I understand it is she and I. So we're on set B here. So it's Oganali. If I wanted to say your friend, it would be a little bit different. Hawaga.
Unaling.
For your friend.
Uh-huh.
Stalin.
No, her friend. Unaling.
Well, that follows what she just said. Unali. Or here. Unali. I mean, for her, she, he, or it. Unali.
And then the Okinaling. I always think of Okinaliko. We are together. Okinaling. We are together. Okinaliko.
Yeah, and just like if you said you two are together, Staligo. It's illegal for you all. Okay. And then that. See, we learn stuff every day. All right, so for all of you that want to know that, Oganali, I'm telling you that us two are friends. Me and her.
Hadi.
No. That's good. All right. Now to our pronoun, or the word here. The Gus. Sequel. Okay, so we don't pronounce the ah on the ga here, and we don't pronounce the ah on the la here. Dakshildanela. Da being well, there's your, let's see, what was it? Your plural prefix. So it's the same here, because you're still talking about more than one thing, or in this sense, wiring, because that's the root of the word. And ga, daksh, the ga here is going to be for you talking about your friend. So with our set A, we have zi, he, and ah, and sometimes ga, and that's where that comes into play, is whenever it changes into ga. And it depends on which word you talk about, that whether it'll change from ah to ga. I believe it's when you have a vowel in front of it, that it has to have a consonant too, and it changes it. So we won't get too much into that either. But we'll just look at the root here. Stayed the same, just as it did here for she, la, dun, and then nay is tacked onto it. And then the last thing we want to focus on is lun. Lun being the past tense for And something that somebody told me one time is you can remember these by looking at the syllabary, the different tenses. So on the ends of these words, it'll have ah, a, e, o, u, and So ah being now, a being a question or past tense, e being like a command in some tenses, and future tense. O being habitual, like all the time. And then u, that can be a question as well, because you have oshigwudzu, are you well? And you'll see that a lot, zu. And then you have lastly for past tense.
Come on.
Oh, stone.
Did it?
Rồi lấy lì chứ chứ. Cái gì anh này có thì cậu lì câu ai. Cái nào. Khi lo yên Webster. Khi nào he say use conjugate cái nó là Webster. Khi nào he say used inflection. Cái sao. Non-verb, noun. Cái có cái này.
Come on.
Ushquanikt.
Ursprünglich.